threatening. The Missouri Senate race is heating up as up-and-comer Josh Hawley looks to take on sitting Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. At an event at the state's capitol last week, McCaskill urged voters to keep Hawley and his big-money donors out of the Senate, while Hawley blasted McCaskill as being a tool of high-dollar special interests.
When they actually try to sell this BS that I'm an elitist and this guy is a populist, call him out. Call him out.
She has done a good job of representing her true constituents. And by her true constituents, I mean the D.C. lobbyists and Wall Street and Hollywood, because that's who gives her money. That's where she gets her funding.
Jason Rosenbaum is a political reporter for St. Louis Public Radio, joining me now from St. Louis, Missouri. Jason, you've got a really competitive race in your state. Josh Hawley, relatively new to the political scene. He's only 38, and he launched his bid for the Senate less than a year after being elected Attorney General. Why don't you start by saying how he's viewed in Missouri?
Well, one of the benefits to Hawley launching his political career only a year or two after being elected is he doesn't have a long track record in public office that can be exploited. On the other hand, it kind of makes him look like he is trying to jump from one office to the other very quickly, even though his 2016 campaign actually criticized his more seasoned opponents for trying to do just that. So I think that there are some benefits to being this young and this new and having run statewide before. He knows what he's getting into. On the other hand, I don't think that he's ever experienced a race with this much money, this much attention, and the stakes being the control of the U.S. Senate so high.
Well, how optimistic are Republicans? I mean, Claire McCaskill has won 3 terms in that state for Senate. How much support does she continue to have? Is he a real threat?
I think that Republicans are cautiously optimistic because Trump won the state of Missouri by a very large margin. And I think that there's some sentiment that the fact that the president is still at least over 50% in popularity in Missouri gives someone like Hawley a chance. However, if Trump's approval ratings go down in the next few months, which is certainly possible, then that national environment may weigh heavily on Missouri voters that supported Trump in the past. That's what happened in 2006 when McCaskill won in the first place. George W. Bush was incredibly unpopular throughout the country in Missouri, and McCaskill used that to defeat a very tough opponent in Senator Jim Talent.
All right. At an event in Missouri in November, President Trump voiced his support for Hawley. I want to play some sound from that.
Josh, our next senator, where is he? He's going to be a great senator. And he wants to see a major tax cut. I think I can speak for him, right? And your current senator does not want to see a tax cut. That's not good. That's not good. He wants your taxes to go up.
So, Jason, according to a Morning Consult poll, President Trump had an approval rating of 50% in Missouri in March. How will Hawley balance his support from the president, his direct endorsement, without alienating other Missourians?
It's a tricky balance for him because, as we all know, Trump does have appeal in places like rural Missouri and even some suburban enclaves in Missouri. But he's unpredictable, and he's prone to making very provocative statements both on social media and throughout the airwaves, not to mention some of his seedier personal scandals that have come to the public eye. So at this point, when Trump is still above or around 50% in Missouri, Hawley can't really afford to completely disavow himself with President Trump. And he really can't at this point because the president has held a fundraiser for him, and he's on record of saying that he is happy with Trump's support. That will become more of a liability if those approval ratings that you just put up on the screen go down to 40 and 30%. And that will give someone like McCaskill an opportunity to possibly win votes in places that Democrats typically don't do well, like rural Missouri and some suburban enclaves.
How much do you think that tightrope that Hawley is walking between support for Trump and alienating other voters is a trend we may see in other elections across the country?
I think it depends on the state that you're in.
Sure.
Obviously, states like West Virginia and North Dakota, that may be easier for Republican candidates to embrace Trump, even if his approval ratings go down. In other states, it's clearly going to be more difficult, where the approval ratings nationally correspond with the state. I think Arizona might be a possible example of that, and Missouri could be too.
Yeah, and here's another reason why that I want to bring up, and that's tariffs. Tariffs on China. China has now retaliated with its own proposed tariffs on a long list of U.S. products, which, as you know, include agricultural goods like soybeans grown in the heart of Trump country. Jason, could that mobilize farmers who largely supported the president in 2016 to vote against Hawley in this election?
People like Senator McCaskill certainly hope so. What was interesting to me is that both Senator McCaskill and Republican Senator Roy Blunt used almost exactly the same rhetoric condemning the Trump tariffs. They feared, and I think it has come to pass with the announcement of the China retaliatory tariffs, that putting tariffs on steel and aluminum would lead to other countries putting tariffs on agricultural commodities, which is a huge industry throughout Missouri. So McCaskill has been hammering home that point at places both in rural Missouri and in more urban parts of the state that she needs big turnout in. And I think that could end up being an issue that she could use to mobilize rural votes that, while she doesn't need to completely win rural Missouri outright, she cannot win statewide without getting at least 35 or 40% of those voters.
Interesting race you got over there in Missouri. Jason Rosenbaum, thank you so much for your insights.